I'm a lot bit excited about what God's speaking to my heart. So I will say I'm a tad bit emotional. He's just been speaking so much and it's been so good. So um, anyways, let's jump into this. I'm not really sure how many people are going to actually know about this, but does anybody in here watch the TV show Survivor or heard of it or anything? Kevin? Okay, a little bit. Okay. Justin and I love to watch Survivor because we love to people watch. It's the only reason we like to watch it. But I'll give you guys a quick kind of synopsis of like what is going on with Survivor. So they have 18 people who come and go. They're strangers. They pull them from all over the U.S. and the world, and they come and they put them on an island together for 27 days, I think is the case. And they give them limited resources. They get put into different tribes, and they have to earn their basic needs. They can like build there's shelters. What am I looking for? They build their shelters out of stuff that's on the land. They get food from what's on the land. They can go fish. But like every once in a while they'll earn, if you win this challenge, you're going to get cooking supplies, pots and that kind of thing, or fishing gear, stuff like that. But for the most part, though, these people are like starving on this island. And it's a social dynamic thing. They like to switch around the tribes and throw things off where you build. The whole point of it is to get to the end where you're the last person standing and you win $1 million if you do. You probably come home with a whole lot of parasites as well, but you come home and you win $1 million, right? And so in the midst of it, you're trying to like build teams up, build alliances up is what they call them, and you try to find people you can trust. But at the same time, though, eventually you have to vote out people who are in your alliance if you want to win the $1 million. And so anyways, it was created as a social dynamic to see how people could, psychology-wise, how people can interact with each other when they don't have food on their bellies and they're succumbed to the heat, the rain. Sometimes it rains and their shelters don't hold up and all these things. And anyway, so it's just really interesting. We like to watch it because of that. But God's been speaking to me lately about how much life is like Survivor and how it's strategic, it's intense, it's competitive. You have to try to, Survivor's thing is outlast, outplay, outwit, outplay, outlast is their motto they say. So you're constantly trying to outlast, you're trying to outwit and not get blindsided. Just when life gets comfortable is when you get blindsided with something else that's you got going on in your life, right? But you're pushing through exhaustion, hunger, just hoping to get a moment of rest. But I want to present to you a different picture that's painted in Psalm 23, as you guys all know in here. But Psalm 23, we talk about the table that God's prepared for us. It says, "You prepare a table for me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup overflows." So in the middle of chaos, God provides a table. He prepares a table for us. It's not a battlefield strategy meeting, but a table for you while your enemies are still watching you. So one of the things that Survivor does is when there's about 10 people left, you're no longer what they call a merged tribe. You're no longer playing in teams, but your individual game, and you have to go and win these challenges to keep going and to win immunity from going to the night that you could get voted out, right? So they start to introduce this thing called the reward challenge, and it gives the winner an opportunity to take people with them to what they call the sanctuary. And so when it starts, the host, he started like really getting people to want the reward. And he'll say, okay, the winner gets to go to the sanctuary where good things happen. And he says, where you'll enjoy steak, baked potatoes with all the fixins, fresh squeezed lemonade, and to top it all off, chocolate cake. And they'll pan over to the contestants and they're all over there haven't eaten in 2 weeks and they're like, ah. And they're like literally just like drooling at the thought of all this stuff, right? All this food to nourish them and things. So while the winners get to go and they pick their people and they go to have their meal, the others have to go back to camp and they're hungry and they're angry and they're plotting revenge. But the good news is that unlike Survivor, Jesus said that you did not earn this, but I still invite you. Come and eat. Everyone is searching to belong, especially when life feels like a competition where you're constantly trying to prove your worth, outlast the pain, and dodge betrayal. But Psalm 23 reminds us that God doesn't give us snacks. He throws a banquet in the presence of our problems. So I have a few points. The first point is the king sets the table, not you. In formal dining, the host will set the table before the guests arrive. The plates are aligned, the glasses are polished, the napkins are folded, and there are names at each seat. A well-set table says that I've been expecting you. There's no last-minute scrambling. It's not thrown together. It's very intentional. God doesn't wing it. He prepares it. Your seat at his table isn't a last-minute thought. It's been set in honor of you since before you even arrived. Just like this table here was set before you guys arrived this morning. I was doing some research and the Bible Hub online says that the table holds significant symbolic meaning throughout the Bible, serving as a representation of fellowship, provision, and covenant. It's a place where divine and human interaction occur, reflecting both physical sustenance and spiritual communion. In biblical times, sharing a meal at a table was an intimate act of fellowship. The table symbolizes unity and community, as seen in Psalm 23:5, where it says, you prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil, my cup overflows. Here, the table is a place of divine hospitality and protection, illustrating God's provision and care amidst adversity. It was also part of the host's job to keep their guests safe when they were hosting. So when life feels like it's messy and unstable, God's table is already prepared. It's waiting to restore you. What has God already been preparing for you that you're too stressed to notice? Think about that. Point number 2, the table is set in front of your enemies. This is not a private dinner that you've been invited to. It's God saying, A, I'm not afraid of what surrounds you, and B, watch me bless you in front of what was meant to break you. In Survivor, those who lose the reward challenge often feel bitter watching the others feast. But in your life, the table is not about making your enemies jealous. It's about God providing his faithfulness in full view of what opposes you. The survivor reward, the sanctuary, with a meal is prepared for them in the presence of their enemies. The host is literally painting a picture of what it's going to be like. I mean, how many of you, when I said earlier, could just picture a big juicy steak and like taste it? You're Kevin, yeah. Your taste buds start. Isn't that crazy how you do that? It brings back memories, and your senses do that, right? The other day I was at my mom and dad's house, and mom's like, "Hey Jay, I got a strawberry. You want to have it?" And I was like, "Sure." And I took one bite of that strawberry, and I immediately went back to my grandma's garden when I was a little girl. And I said, "Man, Mom, like what is that? How do you like go back to something like that and you just taste one little thing?" And she said, "Well, it may be this, it's the same breed of the strawberries." So I was like, "Well, that's true." But like immediately I remembered how good that was and the memories I had with my grandma and all of that was just so good. So if you can imagine, you haven't had food for 2 weeks if you're on Survivor, right? Someone starts telling you about a meal you're going to if you win a challenge. It drives you to win because you want the food, but reality is that someone loses And in the case of Survivor, it automatically makes the losers your enemies. They get bitter when they aren't picked because they are left behind with the painted picture of the comfort that they could have had. Sometimes they'll even like have the reward challenge on the same island as the people who lose. And so they can hear them through the trees laughing and, oh, that's good, and just enjoying their food. So it's just really like in the presence of their enemies, right? That's what God's been showing me. So what enemies are watching you? Are you being watched by fear, by betrayal, anxiety? God says to sit down anyway, and I'll feed you right in front of them. Your enemies might be external, like persecution or people, or they may also be internal, like anxiety, fear, or temptation. God's been showing me He doesn't always remove the pressure, but He nourishes my soul in the midst of it. This meal that He's prepared for you is a declaration to your enemies that this one belongs to me. A biblical example would be at the Last Supper. Jesus sat at the table with His betrayer present, and even there He broke bread and He offered grace. Your enemy cannot win when you sit at the table. He can't take the comfort that your host has so graciously provided for you. He has to watch as the host prepares the table for you. He has to watch as you feast and feel the hunger that all of his tricks and games can never fill. He can plan all he wants, but all you have to do is just stay at the table. You may feel surrounded, but you're not defeated. The enemy may be watching you, but the host is preparing. Your anxiety may whisper, but the table speaks louder. You don't need to fight for a seat. God's reserved it for you. Romans 8:31 says, if God is for us, who can be against us? And Isaiah 54:17 says, no weapon formed against you shall prosper. Amen. Point 3, the table refills what the battle drains. In Survivor, the players are hungry, they're emotionally drained, they're sunburned, some of them got bites all over them, they're injured. The feast is more than food, it's about restoration. Psalm 23 says, he restores my soul and my cup overflows. There's goodness at the table, right? All you need to do is sit down and take your place. There's food for your starving soul, and it's made by the best chef in the history. Your spiritual journey, you may have battled through sickness, wrestled with anxiety, or you've walked through betrayal. But at God's table, you don't just survive, you thrive because you are refilled. You're refilled, but your enemies aren't. If you need some peace today, just come to the table and rest in the presence of the King. Also, one of the things that they do in Survivor on the reward challenges is they will have an advantage hidden at the table. And so as the seasons have gone by, players have learned that they need to be looking for it. And I was just thinking about that, and God was showing me, I have an advantage at my table too. You just got to come and you got to sit, and you'll see that advantage, right? That the enemy can't have because he's not at the table. Okay. Point number 4, from Lodibar to the king's table, 2 Samuel 9. Did my thing fall out? No, just got moved. This is David and Mephibosheth. It was so funny. When growing up, side note, a little bit, growing up, my youth pastor, when he became the pastor at our church, he did a sermon about Mephibosheth one time, and he was constantly like mispronouncing his name because it's such a hard name to like get out all the words and say it right, and he would just make up random names. He would say it, and it reminds me of that. Anyways, it says, David asked, is there anyone still left of the house of Saul to whom I can show kindness for Jonathan's sake? Now there was a servant of Saul's household named Ziba. They summoned him to appear before David, and the king said to him, are you Ziba? At your service, he replied. The king asked, "Is there no one still alive from the house of Saul to whom I can show God's kindness?" Ziba answered to the king, "There is still a son of Jonathan. He is lame in both feet." "Where is he?" the king asked. Ziba answered, "He's at the house of Machir, the son of Amiel in Lodebar." So King David had him brought from Lodebar, from the house of Machir, the son of Amiel. When Mephibosheth, son of Jonathan, the son of Saul, came to David, he bowed down to pay him honor. David said, "Mephibosheth, at your service," he replied. "Don't be afraid," David said to him, "for I will surely show you kindness for the sake of your father Jonathan. I will restore to you all the land that belonged to your grandfather Saul. You will always eat at my table." Mephibosheth bowed down and said, "What is your servant that you should notice a dead dog like me?" Then the king summoned Ziba, Saul's steward, and said to him, "I have given your master's grandson everything that belonged to Saul and his family. You and your sons and your servants are to farm the land for him and bring to the crops, so that the land for him, so that your master's grandson may be provided for. And Mephibosheth, grandson of your master, will always eat at my table." So Mephibosheth was broken, right? He was crippled in both of his feet. He was forgotten. He was living in Lodebar, which means barren place. And he was afraid because he thought David was going to kill him. But David didn't bring him to a courtroom. He brought him to his table. The word says that he ate at the king's table like one of the king's sons. How many of you have ever felt like an outsider? Like schoolyard pick when you're in school and you got picked last? You don't know that. You were always the first, weren't you? um, or maybe, when you walk into the cafeteria and there's nowhere to sit, or your friends have all sat together and there's not a spot for you. I think it's something that all of us as humans do at one point or another in our lives, is we want to feel wanted. We don't feel like we're good enough because we're not accepted in different areas, right? And then I think it capitalizes, growing up, my mom was big into sports. She was very talented and good at that. And I just couldn't. I remember like them pulling me aside after T-ball. And like when I was in coach pitch, maybe, I'm not sure. It was coach pitch because I was T-ball. I could somewhat do something, but I hit the tee more than I did the ball. But they pulled me aside and pitched to me individually. And I mean, it was probably 100. Maybe I was, who knows, maybe I'm over exaggerating, but I don't know how many times they pitched to me, and I did not one single time hit that ball. And my mom and dad never, ever in my life have told me they're not proud of me or that I'm not good enough. But for some reason, sorry, I'm hitting that microphone. But for some reason, in my head, I thought I wasn't good enough. And it translated to all these other areas of my life where I have tried to earn my way to make myself good enough for whatever aspect it is in my life, right? So sometimes I think that like one little thing in our head gets twisted and then we capitalize on it and we keep saying, "I'm not good enough," when no one's told you that. No one's made you feel that way. You're just not, maybe it's not the area that you're called to be in, right? Um, so sometimes you believe the lie and it just keeps compounding. Or like I said, it's not even true and you just have made it what it's not. I'm trying to get better about, I listen to this podcast and the pastor on there says, don't be putting bubbles above people's heads, meaning don't be thinking this is what someone else is thinking. And you're putting the thought bubble across the top of their head that they're not even thinking. I can't tell you how many times I've accidentally done that and thought, oh, I've hurt this person or whatever. Last week, I was texting the t-shirt guy. We've been trying to get t-shirts ordered. And I was like, what's going on? Like, he's not responding to me. Did I make him mad? I had asked him about a certain thing, and maybe he was like, oh, she's too much. She wants too much detail on this shirt or something. And I texted him, and I was like, hey, just making sure you got my messages. And he was like, I'm so sorry. My wife miscarried last week. And I mean, like, Talk about feeling like an idiot. Like, I was just like, I'm so sorry. We're praying for you guys. Of course, take the time that you need to take. Been there and done that. Like, take the time you need to take. But it's just ridiculous. I caused something and it caused a problem that wasn't even there, right? And we all do it different times, but I've been doing it a lot lately, so I'm trying to get better about it. um, but God isn't calling you to prove yourself. He's just calling you to sit down at the table and eat. So even when you feel like you're the weakest player or you were dropped too hard, there's still a seat at the table with your name on it. God's not searching for perfection. He's searching for hearts to pour his grace on. You may feel forgotten, but he has not forgotten you. The word says that Mephibosheth was dropped as a child, and his identity was shaped by loss, trauma, and disability. How many of us at some point have let that define us? What's something that's happened to us have let it define who we are, right? He lived in Lodibar, meaning no pasture, barren place, dry. But the king still sent for him. Like Mephibosheth, we expect judgment and rejection, but God has given us kindness and a seat at his table. Your condition doesn't disqualify you from the king's table. It's why he's calling you to his table. He doesn't invite us because we're strong. He invites us because we're gracious, or he's gracious, sorry. The table is open. It's not about what you've done, but it's about what Jesus has already done. There's room for the prodigal, the broken, the addicted, the doubter, the church kid, and the street kid. Are you still living in Lodibar when the king is calling you to his table? And you may say, why do I deserve the seat at the table? I've disobeyed God. I've neglected him. I've put other gods before him. I've lied. I've cheated. I've stolen. Whatever the case may be, the list can go on and on. But the truth is that no one is perfect. Not one single person is perfect. And if you allow yourself to think that you have to earn a place, you're never going to be able to sit at the table. God's not saying you have to earn a place. If he was saying that, there would be no need for him. He fills in the gaps, and he just calls us to follow his lead, right? In Survivor, it's the strong who win the feast, but in the kingdom of God, it's the broken, the weary, the humble, the outsider, and those who admit, I can't earn this. So maybe you've been living in Lodabar in fear, shame, and survival mode. Or maybe you've been dropped by people who should have carried you. But Jesus is calling, there's a seat for you. Okay, point 5, the table changes your identity. At the table, Mephibosheth became family. He was no longer the cripple from Lodibar. He was a son of the king's table. Likewise, God's table isn't just where he feeds you, but it's where he redefines you. This is my favorite part about circles and our quarterly gathering for lunch, Feast and Fellowship. You guys had a great time last week at Feast and Fellowship. Wasn't that refreshing? You know, with Bishop being here, we got set at a different table because he wanted to sit with us than who we would normally sit with. Not that we have some, you know what I'm saying. But I think everyone sat with people that they hadn't really talked to before, hadn't really, you know what I mean? Like everyone kind of got some more insight to people that they don't normally get to talk to. That's the same thing with circles too. I love circles because we get to build relationships in our small groups, right? I can't tell you how many times that I've sat down at a table and the people around the table have encouraged me or have given a word to me or have said, hey, Jayla, that's not what someone's thinking. Quit putting thoughts in their head, in your head, that what they're saying. It's always been refreshing when I'm around a table with like believers who love me and who care about me and who want to see me grow. One of the first times that Thea and I sat down together at a table, we found out that, we both did. I found out that one of her cousins is a couple that has known me since before I was born, like Shirley has, that went to June Rose and Lonnie Paul in Virginia, and Virginia's Theta's cousin. And I was like, this is just a crazy small world that, like, we end up over here, and these people I've known forever, and they're good friends of my family, and they're related to Theta. Um, but fellowship is just such a huge part of the table. You sit down, you talk to somebody else, and you find out that you're not the only person who deals with something that you're dealing with, right? You find out that somebody else has dealt with a miscarriage or dealt with divorce or whatever the case is that you think has kept you from earning a place at the table. But you've built a new friendship where God's restoring you and he's using you in ways that you never even saw coming, just to be honest. Just such a source of encouragement. So when you sit at the table, you become united and you unite yourself against a common enemy. Can I be real with y'all for a minute? Pastor Justin likes to say that all the time. So I've been needing to sit at the table. I've let life get a little bit crazy lately. So I told myself, you're going to sit at the table, which is why I'm sitting here today. You're not going to get up and you're not going to move around because you don't need to earn this. And as I said earlier, I was nervous and I still am nervous, but the Lord has shown me I am enough as who I am. And I have to just step forward in what he's told me to do. And he will fill in the gaps and he will speak what he needs to say. And, but he said, I need you to obey. And so, I said, okay, let's get a table set up. And I'm going to sit at the table then and just let him speak to me and let myself get filled. It's my reminder I don't have to earn my place here. I just have to sit down and let the host take care of me, right? Anyone ever go to a party and the host has everything that you can possibly need? Andrew, I will tell you, your parents are good hosts. They're really good hosts. They make sure you got a coffee in your hand when you're over there. Yes, they do. Or some random concoction that Joey's come up with. And it's really good. It's really good. But there's good party planners out there, but then the host takes it to a whole nother level, right? They want you to be comfortable when you're at their house, and they want any needs that they can possibly meet to be met while you're there. When you have a good host, sometimes you overstay your welcome. I'm not good about picking up on subtle hints of, hey, get out of my house. And it's happened to me before. But as Justin says, I'm a talker. She'll talk to you. She'll talk to you. I'm like, I will talk to you. But that's who God's made me to be. And my parents gave me the name that means that. So it's their fault. Just kidding. Anyways, but man, aren't you thankful that you cannot overstay your welcome at God's table? He is always there for you. And as Justin said before, I didn't really have, it was me and Cody and Mikkel growing up. And I don't remember, I just remember my grandma and my Nana always made tons of food, like tons of food. And so there was never lack. But Justin grew up where, his dad had back surgery and they were living off the food pantry for a long time. And he was one of 4. So it was eat or get eaten, man. Get your food in and get it done. And I don't remember ever lacking, but he was used to getting seconds before, he would lose the chance to get any more food. And so anyways, I just think about that and think about the fact that you don't have to sit at God's table and eat so fast that your stomach gets sick. That's not in my notes. But there's always plenty for exactly what you are needing when you are needing it. You don't have to rush it. You don't have to overfill yourself. You just sit there and God brings it to you. So in closing, you have a seat. Whether you're in survival mode, you're exhausted by trials, you're ashamed of your past, or you're surrounded by your enemies, Jesus says, come, sit, and be filled. You belong at the table. The table is already set. Your name is already written. The King is already waiting for you. Come to the table. Amen.